Time now for the Welcome Mat, brought to you by Northlands Golf Course.
Let's get into it.
I don't know if it was malicious. Probably not. But I do know it was another WTF moment. My question to ownership would be, was it worth it? And the architect, and I use that term loosely, given there wasn't much architecture, more finger painting with this team. It's like the running of the Bulls in Pamplona. You know someone is going to get hurt.
That's what you all need to understand here, right now.
Has Bruce Boudreau coached his last game with the Vancouver Canucks? That is the big question over the next month as the Canucks watch the Stanley Cup playoffs and plot for free agency and the draft. President of Hockey Operations Jim Rutherford said today that the team is not willing to extend Boudreau because he didn't coach a full season. It sounds like management still needs to be convinced. Here's Boudreau from earlier today at Rogers Arena.
We would be willing to have him back under the contract that he agreed to when he came here. Right. And that's certainly not to say that at the end of next year we wouldn't want him back. He continues to do the job he's doing. We have an exclusive time period to negotiate a new contract at the end of next season. And I just feel that as good a job as he's done, it wasn't a full season. And I feel that giving him a chance to take the team from training camp and all the way through next season, I guess we could get to a point where partway through the season we may decide to talk about that.
Partway, okay. Well, the Canucks want him back next season, as you heard, on those terms that were initially agreed to by Boudreau's representative and Canucks owner, Francesco Aquilini. You may remember Aquilini went out and hired Boudreau, then hired Rutherford, who in turn hired Patrik Allvin. The ass-backwards way this went down had some risk, and today that was exposed. I don't think Boudreau is Allvin's guy. In fact, I've had two people tell me they don't much get along. That Boudreau took some of Allvin's comments about the team lacking structure and good habits personally. I think it's also likely that ownership has not green-lit an extension, and even a one-year extension. Does a one-year extension not quell the whole storm here? If you had offered him a one-year extension, if he agrees, you don't have this day, you don't have a will he or won't he coach the Vancouver Canucks next year. Alas, I don't think that was green-lit. And given that Rutherford said, quote, managing up would be difficult if you're paying several coaches not to coach, and of course, Canucks already paying Travis Green not to coach after extending him last offseason. Boudreau has until June 1st to opt out and pursue other NHL opportunities. There may well be some. In fact, one might have opened up today. The Philadelphia Flyers are searching for a new coach with today's announcement that interim Mike Yeo will not be back. Boudreau's offseason home is in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's 2 hours from Philly. He's also quite close with Flyers general manager Chuck Fletcher. They work together in Minnesota. He may also be a candidate in Vegas and Toronto should those franchises be looking for coaches this summer. It could be a very busy coaching carousel with perhaps one-third of the league looking for new bench bosses. Those who know Boudreau will tell you the Maple Leafs represent his dream job. He's a former player there. He's a Toronto guy. Rutherford warned that players who don't listen to Boudreau will be gone before the coach next year. When asked about the lame duck status, that's, of course, much easier said than done. If you have superstar players who don't believe or won't listen to the coach, you're sure as hell not getting rid of them. Rutherford also acknowledged that he'd like an answer from Boudreau sooner rather than later, warning that the longer the decision lingers, the more likely it is to become emotional. My bet is it's emotional now. You win 65% of the games. Your fans are chanting your name, and a first-time GM isn't convinced you're the guy months after the owner gave you his blessing. Today's the day the Rutherford-Allvin honeymoon ended, with fans scratching their heads about what their team is thinking. In other words, the Canucks are back to being the Canucks. That's Welcome Mat for today. We invite your feedback. The feedback channels as follows: on email, live at sekeresandprice.com. You can text 778-402-9680 to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips, save time. Opt in to get a ready next text when you're up next for a cut. On Twitter, I'm at Sekeres and Price, and I'll welcome at a presentation of Northlands Golf Course, celebrating 25 years of incredible golf up on the North Shore. We have more winners who have found those Sekeres and Price logoed golf balls strewn about the course. If you find one, turn it into the pro shop for a gift from us and a gift from Northlands. And of course, on the Northlands app, you got the Tee Time Standby feature on the home screen. You can select the day, time, number of players, and if people cancel and you're available, you'll get a push notification for a tee time. Bookings 90 days in advance. Details at golfnorthlands.com. Mr. Price.
We're just on profoundly different sides of this. I personally, if I'm running a hockey team, I'm not listening to what the fans are saying. I'm not being swayed by what they're chanting in the arena. I'm looking at what the coach is doing with my players, and this is a coach that lets the players have fun.
Yeah. So 165% of the games.
Yeah. With scores on an absolute heater. The scoring chances did not improve greatly from Green to Boudreau. Scoring chance percentage went from 47.9% in the first half of the season, or first quarter of the third of the season with Green, to 48.7%. It went up 0.8%. Under Boudreau. Still didn't get to 50%. They weren't getting more than half of the scoring chances game to game. Their shooting percentage went from 6 to 8.5%, 2.5%, a 40% chance. I don't think Bruce Boudreau can be given credit for Elias Pettersson finding his form. I don't think Bruce Boudreau can be given credit for Garland finding his form, especially considering both of those guys didn't find their form till 2 months after Boudreau took over. So I don't think
it was less than that on Pettersson, but
end of February, month and a half anyway. No, that's 2 months. He took over December 8th. It's 2 months. He didn't get hot until the end of February. This is a coach that is very fun to watch. He coaches a fire wagon style of hockey. It's a very offensive brand of hockey. He is a fun guy to be around. So no question the fans are going to like him. I'm not surprised that the players like him as well. Hey, Matthew Barzal really liked Doug Wade as a head coach. Got him an 80-point rookie season. I don't think it means that Doug Wade is the guy that the Islanders want. And they proved he was not the guy for them under very similar kinds of circumstances. A fire wagon season that resulted in no playoffs. And that's what we saw here. This is not to say that Bruce Boudreau can't change his ways, can't get more structure on the blue line, and can't find a way to get this team into the playoffs. He very well might be. And what Jim Rutherford is saying is, show me. And when you do, we'll extend you. And he even said, and I've been clear about this prior to today's show as well, if Boudreau has this team on a .625 winning percentage by the second week of December, he will have his extension. To me, there is no question.
Yes, but you've got to fend off potentially other suitors before then, Blake. It's no guarantee he's going to be back. It may well be that Chuck Fletcher has already called him up and said, Bruce, I want you to coach the Flyers next year.
Yeah.
So, in terms of listening to the fans, I think you need to be respectful of your customer. I think you particularly need to be respectful of your customer when you're increasing season ticket prices and inviting people back to the arena after a year to a year and a half of them being out of the arena and developing different habits. You've got to lure people back to Rogers Arena for next year, particularly if you're going to have a step back year on route to constructing a contender. That, you want people who are helping you sell tickets, who make you feel good about the brand, and Bruce Boudreau made it fun this year.
Again, patently disagree, because to me, gesture moves is what got this organization into trouble in the first place. Gesture moves that make you feel good for a moment but aren't a part of the bigger plan. If this organization doesn't feel like this coach is a part of the bigger plan, yeah, you have to swallow some bitter pills sometime to move forward in the direction that you want.
But you're years from the mountaintop. Like, you're years from being a contender. There's no harm in keeping them here in the interim and then replacing them with the person who you think is going to take them.
We're not talking 5, maybe 3 years from a contender, 2 years from the playoffs, something like that. Yeah, that's so.
Right. So in terms of changing his style and his ways, did we not have a coach do that with some success here recently? Allvin, defensive-minded coach. GM said we need to play more offensive. What happened? 2 straight President's Trophies. And then thirdly...
Well, the book's not closed here, Matt. Bruce Boudreau may very well be the head coach of this team.
I understand that, Blake. I understand that. The other thing I was going to say, Bruce Boudreau has nearly 600 wins in the National Hockey League as a head coach. Mm-hmm. Patrik Allvin has a few handfuls now as GM of the Vancouver Canucks. You're a first-time GM, and you're not even the chief. Jim Rutherford's the boss. And from my information, it's Allvin that is the barrier here.
Okay, but Matt.
Because Rutherford
Allvin's not bullying Rutherford.
No, but I think Allvin is telling Rutherford, he's not my guy. And I think Jim is supporting Allvin because he hired Allvin. Because remember, Francesco hired Bruce and then hired Rutherford, and Rutherford came out and said, I was kept in the loop, and I like Bruce, and Bruce and I go way back.
Matt, you heard
so I think Allvin is the guy. I think Allvin is the guy in the organization that wants a different coach, and I think that dovetails with ownership's desires not to have to pay more money on coaching because the previous group screwed it up so bad by extending Travis Green after his lame duck season, only to fire him 25 games.
Matt, you said it countless times. You subscribe to the fact that ownership wants Bruce Boudreau back. If Jim Rutherford felt strongly enough that he wanted Bruce Boudreau back, president and ownership want the coach back, but the first month GM
that's what I'm saying.
is not
I
the
think
guy.
Rutherford is aligning with Allvin here. I think this is management's way of getting rid of the coach without having to be the bad guys and getting rid of the coach.
And my point is, if Rutherford really had a strong feeling that he wanted Bruce Boudreau back, he would say, no, we're gonna bring him back. Allvin be damned. Might he be aligning with Allvin? Yeah, but because he probably agrees with him. If he had an ulterior, he's not going to defy owner to support the 1-month-old GM. If he's aligning with him, it's because he agrees with him. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not an agreement that they don't like Bruce Boudreau, because if they said that, they wouldn't say, sign here if you want to come back.
But action over words, Blake. They have paid lip service to Bruce Boudreau. Where's the action? 1-year extension.
Why do that when you don't have to?
Offer him a 1-year extension. Say, Bruce, look, it was obviously different circumstances when you hired. We don't want you going in a lame duck year. We know how difficult that is for a head coach because you can lose command of the room with the players. In fact, we saw it here last year with Travis Green.
But, Matt, you have no evidence that has anything to do with it.
They finished last in the Canadian division.
Teams finish last all the time.
They were worse
Somebody's
than
got to
Ottawa.
be. Yes.
What were you watching? The hell were you watching?
Matt.
I was watching a godforsaken team. One of the worst in the NHL.
And
a bunch of players who quit on the coach earlier this year after he got re-signed.
And do you have any evidence that it's because of his contract? No, none. Coaches lose the room all the time.
Yeah, sure.
All the time.
A quick way to do that, if you want to get in the fast lane to that, is let them coach out a lame duck year. Because the players look around and go, well, this coach hasn't been extended for next year. Obviously, management and ownership doesn't believe in him.
Matt, I've talked to numerous players about this. They have no idea what the the contract status is of their coach.
Yeah, they don't read and they don't get on social media.
The only time
or listen to the radio, all the other lies players tell you. Come on.
The only time a player will take note as to what the contract status is of a coach is if they are re-signing because they want to know who the coach will be in the long term of their contract. They don't pay attention to that.
That's patently false, Blake.
No, it isn't.
How can you generalize about 800 players?
How can you generalize that coaches in lame duck years lose rooms? The same way.
Because we saw it.
No, you saw a coach that had been here and is hard on his players lose the room. Matt, you've also talked out of both sides of your mouth there. You've said that the player.
If you don't want to pay attention, you don't have to pay attention. No. We saw it a year ago with Travis Green.
You're having it both ways. You said that the coach was too hard on players. That's why he lost the room. So which is it?
I think he was a lame duck and lost the room. And then I think he got extended. And I think some players quit on him because they hated him. I think Pettersson was one of those players. And I think Betzer was one of those players.
So it was because he was hard on them. Yeah. That's why.
Yes.
Yes.
I think he was hard on them to the point where he got to his lame duck year. He wasn't necessarily their best friend. He got extended unbelievably after finishing last in the Turtle Derby that was the Canadian.
And they got worse. Right.
Because the players revolted against him.
Right. So it wasn't because of
the same group that had this success and won 65% of the games under Boudreau won nada under Travis Green. Why do you think that is?
The Travis Green example that you bring up is actually proof against the lame ducks theory because they got worse with the extension.
Over an extremely small sample size, they got worse.
Well, it's just an extension. Like, it just proves that the losing was nothing to do with the contract. The losing in the first quarter of this year is attached to the losing from last year. It's the same progression. It's the same movement downward.
Do me a favor. Go out, talk to coaches, and ask them, do you think you have the same command and authority in the final year of your contract that you do in the first year of your contract?
It's in their benefit to say yes. They want the extension. Of course they're going to tell you that answer. It's in their interest.
Sure.
It's like, do you want a raise if you play well?
And,
yes.
And this is what I'm saying with Boudreau now. I think, based on what John Shannon told us yesterday, that when he's on the sidelines, he was really taking it personally and questioning, boy, like, why am I not going to get another opportunity? You know, why isn't my name in the mix there? So I think security is most important to him. And I think if a team comes along and says, hey, Bruce, you know, we can offer you a 3-year deal or a 4-year deal, I think now the Canucks have invited him to jump at that and say yes. Would you agree with that?
I think you have to be wary of assigning too much significance to 60 games of NHL.
Well, you just tried to assign significance to 25.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't. What I said was those 25 give you further evidence that what you saw in the previous season, it's the same. So it didn't have anything to do. It's the same. If you
just told me it got worse.
Well, whatever. Even if that's and
I'm the guy talking out of both sides of my mouth.
No. That's subjective. The objective is it's at least bad. It's at least as worse. If it's not worse, it's as worse. It's as bad. It's the same. It's the same progression. The downward curve continued. It wasn't new. You're not attributing something just to the 25 games. It's the same. Pattern continued with and without contract. That's my point. And you have to. Dominic Ducharme did wonderful things with the Montreal Canadiens.
Yep.
They extended him. What happened? Right? You can't get fascinated by a short run of success.
Well, what happened? Their roster got demonstrably worse. They lost Carey Price. They lost Shea Weber. They lost Philip Deneau.
And what's likely to happen next year here?
You think it's going to get that much worse?
Well, it maybe not to the Montreal scale, but it's not exactly forecasted to get screamingly better.
I mean, Rutherford said today, get a couple of players, we can be a playoff team.
I think he was saying the proximity of a team that's this good to a team that can be amazing is only 1 or 2 players. That he was not talking cap-wise. The cap gymnastics that would need to happen are impossible almost to make that happen, to add 2 players to get that much better.
I don't understand the logic, Blake. Like, the players hold the coach's future in their hands. We all agree that coaches are easier to get rid of than players, particularly guaranteed contract players, as is the NHL, and because of the salary cap. So why wouldn't you want to give your head coach every tool possible to have those players play hard for him? And when you let them coach into a lame duck year, you're removing one of the tools from the box. Because the coach cannot guarantee he's going to be there longer term to survey their career, to help their career.
You're talking about the finest of percentage points, if anything, right now. And if
I don't think so.
And if you're going to do a cup contending season, I might agree with you there. Because you'd want to make sure that all distractions and all possibilities were taken off the table. That's not where this Canucks team is.
And that's my point. So if you don't think he's the guy to get you over the top, fair enough. But he did a magnificent job this year. He's made your customers feel as warm about the brand as they have in years, if not decades. So reward him. And if you have to move on him down the road, move on him down the road. And if it comes at the expense of a few million for the Aquilini Investment Group. That is the cost, gentlemen, of being NHL owners. And so if you're going to nickel-dime coaches, and we've seen it twice now, if you're going to nickel-dime coaches, then when things go to pot and you look in the mirror and go, why do things go to pot? Maybe the answer is standing before the mirror.
Okay, or maybe, just maybe, this pattern of Bruce bumps that we've seen throughout his career is that when Bruce Boudreau arrives,
teams get better.
Teams get better because he's fun. And and his manner of personality, he gives them a bump, especially after what they're taking over.
He makes it fun, absolutely.
Often comes in after hard asses have been there and scorched the earth.
Joy is a wonderful motivator.
But they just want to see what he does with the training camp and to start from the ground up. To me, it's a perfectly reasonable ask.
And that's perfectly fine if he doesn't have an option to get out himself. Like, if you want to play it out in the lame duck season, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't think that's particularly good management. But if the coach is locked in, then the coach is locked in. When the coach has an out, it's an entirely different equation. And that's the case here. Until June 1st, this coach has an out. I mean, anyways, it's their business.
They just don't seem to think he's a critical piece.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, but I think the guy making that call is Patrik Allvin. And quite frankly, I don't yet trust Patrik Allvin. What does he want?
I don't think there's a chance that this is Patrik Allvin making this decision. I think it's Jim Rutherford.
I think it's Jim Rutherford at the urging of Patrik Allvin. I think he's trying to support his first-time general manager because he hired him, brought him from Pittsburgh. Bruce was hired by the owner. It's a delicate dance for Rutherford. That I don't disagree with. He's caught between managing up and managing down a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think you have put your own asses on the line and you have given reason for fans to not feel good about the Vancouver Canucks if Bruce leaves.
I think
and if you build a cup contender over the next 2 years, nobody will give a rat's ass. Yeah. If you continue to fail, guess what? Circle May 3rd as the day it went to pot.
It's a May story, and I think it's ultimately about the roster that they put together. It's going to be a far bigger component.
One more bombshell was the Rutherford's assessment of the Canucks defense. Boy, we knew Bruce was playing talking. Here's Jim Rutherford on the Vancouver Canucks structure on defense.
Our exits from our defensive zone are not good. Probably one of the worst in the league, okay? And so if we have and I can talk about all zones, I could talk about a lot of things, but I'll make this one point. Defensemen are getting in trouble all the time. There's puck pressure. And I'm not saying we have the best defense by no means in the league, but we have defensemen that are certainly capable of playing better if they had that structure. When they're in trouble, what am I supposed to do with the puck? Instead of just bang it up the boards and, they keep it in the zone, bang, it's in our net. So I'm only talking about the defensive zone. I could talk on about the different zones. And it's something that's very fixable, but it's something that the Canucks are going to have to do if we're going to be a consistently good team and not have to rely on our goalie for most games.
I mean, that is a harsher assessment than anyone in the media has offered.
Yeah.
And this team is covered pretty closely.
Yeah.
And harshly when things go poorly.
In fact, the media has been portraying the defense as a
pretty good
ragtag group that has overachieved. Yes. And he's like, no overachievement. You guys were really bad.
No, and by the analytics, by the analytics, that is true. Like, they did pretty well. Even strength chances against.
And to be fair,
Vancouver was very good for most of the year.
He's not speaking about the defense as a whole. He's talking about this facet of the defense, and that is breakouts.
Yep.
Didn't like
exits.
Yeah.
Although he did mention I could talk about all three zones. You're sitting there going, boy, I wonder what he thinks of the neutral zone.
No, that's the thing. Is that they very clearly saw the record as, hey, fun and all that, but not indicative of what this team actually is. They viewed it as a 3-month heater. And that speaks, again, loops back to the Boudreau decision, is they don't think this roster, they think this roster's got a lot of holes.
Yeah.
They think it's got a lot of holes.
Well, and I think they do have holes on defense. Like, I think that's just about as good. Well,
In all three zones, he said it.
I mean, given the constitution of defense, I think they did a reasonable job this year, a pretty good job, in fact, at limiting the chances. I would have thought they would have given up more goals and more chances this year, given who was dressed
For sure.
amongst the six.
But the goaltending can
amongst
be
the six
deceiving
Blue
as well.
Bombers. Yes. And they have really seemed to assign so much of the team's success to Thatcher Demko, huh?
Yeah. No, they are drinking from the Demko chalice, that's for sure.
Yeah, and one part of that is absolutely true, of course. He's the team MVP, but the other part of it I do think is sort of a way to communicate to fans this roster is not nearly good enough, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I think it's smart PR and smart messaging on that side. On Boudreau, well, we shall see. Anyways, well, we haven't had one of those in a while.
No, this is...
Yeah, usually we have a lot more harmony here, you and me.